All right, so with that, let's get started. So the first thing I just kind of wanted to go over with everyone is before you dive into all of this, we strongly encourage your organization to formalize how you're going to work from home and your remote work policies. Because no matter what you do, when somebody is remote, you don't have the same equipment, safeguards, and things of that nature in place. And so when an employee is not in the office and they're working at home, many of the layers of preventative security that we've put in place are no longer there. And so when they're home, when you're working from home, when you're not in the office, it is much easier to make a security mistake, okay? So that's the first thing. The other thing is you want to make sure that you're educating all of your staff about your privacy and security policies so that they're following best practices in regards to that. And we're going to dive in a little bit more to that as we go along. But that's everything from where they connect, their passwords, things of that nature. So let's get started. So the first thing that we end up discussing quite a bit with most of our clients is, okay, what are they looking to do? Typically, there's two things in particular that most business organizations are looking to do. They need a computer for computing, and they need to be able to communicate. So I'm going to focus first on the computing side. So when they're on their computer, what things do they actually need? Obviously, many of these are obvious. Email, files. Is there a special piece of software, special program? Maybe there's some sort of mobile device that they use to check in equipment or whatever. Inventory, things of that nature. You want to make sure you list out what it is that your folks need to have when they're working remotely. And depending on what they need, the solutions that you would put in place may vary. The other thing is you need to assess what options they have for working remotely. Are they working from a home desktop? Are they working from a laptop or a tablet? Do they have a keyboard, a mouse, a monitor? In the office, many people are used to having dual monitors. When they're home, they're no longer going to have that. Are they going to need to be able to print or scan or do anything like that? The other thing that drives this is, of course, what they use when they're in the office. If the user's in the office and they have a desktop versus a laptop, what you can do with them working from home remotely will vary. All right, so the first thing you want to do is assess where everybody is from a computing standpoint. The next thing you want to look at is from a communication standpoint. They just need to be able to make basic phone calls. Do you need to be able to do conference calls? Do you need to be able to do some kind of video calling or instant messaging? And certainly there's text messaging with all of the cell phone technology that's out there today. If you happen to be on a voice over IP system, your choices do expand, become greater. You could consider sending a physical phone home with your employees so that they have a physical phone, or we call it a hard phone, to their home. There are some nuances around what you would do with that. If you have voice over IP, you could also consider doing a soft phone, or perhaps there's an app. The other thing you can choose to do is, depending on the number of calling lines and inbound calls that you expect, you might want to forward your calls to your cell phone. If people are working from home, you may want to consider getting them a headset. If they have a headset in the office, then they're likely used to having that in the office. It will make it a lot easier for them to be functional on the phone when they're remote. If you need mechanisms for communicating, I just put a few here. There's Zoom, we use WebEx. Those are both video conferencing type solutions. Teams has video conferencing built into it. If you're looking more for an instant messaging or a communications channel, Teams and Slack are also both very good solutions for doing communications online, less video, less audio, but more of a group chat type of a scenario. So you want to make your list of what people need to do and then start ticking down based on what they need to do. So now we start to move into what the remote access solutions that are out there. Now, this is not a one size fits all. Every organization is going to have something different, and the questions that you answered in the first two are going to drive which solution you might choose here, or perhaps it's a hybrid. So there are two different options. These are just starting points. many of our clients may have one or the other or some sort of a hybrid. Again, it's not a one size fits all. What you want to, but I want to explain the basic concepts so that it will help you based on the decisions that you made, the needs assessment that you did in the previous two exercises. So if the user is in your office, when they're in the office, they have a desktop and maybe they have a special application piece of software that only runs inside of your local environment from your desktop to your local server. The option that's shown on the left, which is called VPN or Virtual Private Network, might be the easiest and the most efficient. What you actually do in terms of the technology of what's going on is you set the user up who's remotely. They don't have to be on a laptop. It could be a desktop. You can even do it with tablets. You can set up a VPN connection where the VPN, what happens is the remote user handshakes with a piece of equipment that's in your office. So you'll notice that the VPN line goes to that box that's right there. Many organizations, that's a firewall. Some have a special device, which is called a VPN appliance that's dedicated for handling VPN. In this scenario, the user is remote, they're connecting directly to their office, and then what we usually do in this scenario is we might actually hook them up where they're directly accessing their desktop if they have a desktop. And so what it would be like is it'd be like they were literally sitting in their seat in the office. They would have the same programs, the same printers, all of that in the office, but it's accessible remote. If the user in the office has a laptop, now the variations change, and we would need to discuss what your different options are. I don't want to go too deep into the solutions because it's going to vary from case to case, but I want you to understand what's going on here. So in the VPN scenario, we have to do some pre-configuration to get this to work. In the cloud scenario, let's say all of your applications are in the cloud. Obviously, when the user's working from home, if everything's in the cloud, they should be able to just go straight from their home to the cloud application that they have. If you're running Office 365, for example, it could be a line of business application. We have many clients that are running their accounting software, their legal software, or things like that through the cloud. So depending on what you want the person to do, the solution may be different. All right. The next thing I want to talk a little bit about is when you allow the folks to use their own computer from home. We tend to refer to that as bring your own device. Some things to think about. We don't want to just throw security out the window. Now, I hate to say this, but everyone is going to be, it's looking like more and more people are going to be working from home, which means the bad guys that are out there, the hackers, know that we're doing this. So they're going to be looking for those open doors and open windows that you may have left, whether it's in your office or at your home. So I'm going to back up for 1 second to this VPN and cloud, both of them. If you have the ability to put in what's called multi-factor authentication on these solutions, we strongly encourage you to do it. As I mentioned, the bad guys know that all these people are working from home, so now they're going to go around and just see what they can potentially get into. If you have MFA, it now requires another layer of authentication in order to get into whether it's your office or into your cloud solution. So you want to make sure you keep as many security layers in place, even if you're working from home. Okay, so back to the BYOD. If you're going to let your users work from home, you want to strongly encourage them to have Windows 7. Don't forget Windows 10, I'm so sorry. You want them to have Windows 10. Windows 7 has been retired. No more patches are being released for it, which means that user's machine at their home is a potential point of vulnerability. You want to make sure that you require a reputable antivirus solution be installed on the person's machine. I would suggest you require that the employees periodically let you know that they've actually run a scan, that this software is working. What we find is many people tend to assume it's working, they set it and forget it, and then they don't find out until after the fact that it really hasn't been working and not protecting them as they expected. The other thing I would suggest you do is encourage, require all your employees to make sure they run the vendor updates. Again, don't just assume they're running. Check the Windows updates, check the browser updates, check the Adobe Reader updates. All of these things need to be checked. If you're a managed service client of ours, we're doing that on the desktops or the laptops that we manage for you in the office. We don't have the same control over what they're using from home if it's their own device. I would consider, putting a policy in place that does not allow them to use a public or a shared machine. And when I say shared, I mean shared with your kids. Your kids are, downloading things. It could even be a spouse or a significant other who's doing this. Typically, you may want to say during this time, please just use, a dedicated machine that nobody else is sharing. Another big one, backup. If you are allowing users to connect, you want to to the office or to the cloud, it doesn't matter where they're going, discourage them. And I would actually say, document that you do not want them downloading corporate data to their local computers for multiple reasons. From a security standpoint, now you've got corporate data scattered all over the place. And then the other piece to that is that the local machine, the user's local machine may not be backed up, and therefore you could be at risk at losing that information if something happens to the person's home computer. Okay, so that's if the employee is using their own personal machine. The next thing I want to just, hammer home about this security stuff is passwords. Our techs are out and about at client locations all the time. We do see passwords still on Post-its, posted on the wall, on the computer. Just remember, if you are now working from home, those passwords that you had posted on the wall are no longer accessible to you. So you want to make sure that you have the information you need when you're going to work remotely. Sticky notes and hard copies that you have in the office aren't really going to help you if you're sitting at home. The other piece to this is I strongly discourage you from saving inside your web browser. And many of you may have noticed this. When you go to type in a user ID and a password, it will offer to save it in the browser. Establish a policy with your employees that they should not be doing that, because anything that's saved in the browser, if their machine ever were to get hacked in that user's context, they would be able to see those passwords in clear text. And of course, we always want to make sure that you're practicing good password habits in terms of making sure that they're long, unique, and complex. This might be a nice time to implement a password management solution. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this, but that way, if you do have shared passwords among multiple people within your organization, you can easily share any updates with each other if you have a need or are forced to change a password while you're no longer working together in a shared office space. Okay. A written policy is not enough. We do want you to put technology solutions in place that are essentially those locks on the door. I said it before, I'm going to say it again. Multi-factor authentication on as much and as everything that you possibly can. Not convenient, totally get it, but it is really, really important at this time to ensure that people can't inadvertently get into compromised user IDs and passwords. You can have multi-factor on VPN, you can have it on cloud solutions, you can have it on email, you can actually have it on updating your website. So there are a myriad of ways that you can implement multi-factor authentication. If you need more help on this, please let us know. You want to make sure that there's some kind of an idle timeout for your applications or your remote access, so that if somebody does step away, that after a while it will automatically disconnect them, so it doesn't doesn't compromise the security of your environment. Mobile device passwords, most enforce this by default. You just want to make sure you put a policy in place to make people put in, where they have to type in a code to access their mobile device. Okay. The other thing you want to just keep hammering home with folks is remind them that the data is confidential and it belongs to the company. That when they step away from their machines, log off, make sure they put it at the password prompt. Don't email any confidential information. Whenever possible, use email encryption. Don't get careless with, taking USB keys back and forth between the office and your home. A lot of viruses can sneak in that way. And also, we would strongly encourage you to stay with private secured Wi-Fi's. I will say, a lot of the public places are closing, but always better if you can use your own personal Wi-Fi in your home or something where it's known to you and you only. Okay, some gotchas. So, we have actually discussed this in our office a little bit about concerns around having sufficient internet bandwidth. We have found that some of our folks that are working from home are seeing really poor internet performance at their home, and that's because all the people that are typically in the offices are now shifting to the home, and it is stressing the residential internet network. The other piece to this is if you have a third-party solution, things like TeamViewer, LogMeIn, GoToMyPC. We have actually seen capacity and performance issues on these platforms as well. So if that is your answer to remote access, you may find that these providers are being overwhelmed and performance may be a problem. If you're using the VPN solution that I had on the slide on the left, on where it was in the picture on the left, you do need to worry about your own corporate firewall and VPN and overloading it. We are having lots of conversations with our clients to help ensure that that doesn't happen, but you should be prepared for that. It's possible that the devices may lock up. If they get overloaded, we may need to send somebody on site to reboot them. The other one, some other gotchas, people wanting to print from home. This is I guess I'm going to call it a thorn in everyone's side. Printer driver conflicts, trying to get all these, unique home printers working in a work from home situation can be a bit tricky, so just be prepared for that. And I touched on this earlier, but you can anticipate potentially some productivity losses due to lack of dual monitors. Even just, if somebody's working on a laptop, whereas they're used to having a full screen mouse and keyboard, that can really slow people down. So as you're assessing what you want to do and in having people work from home, take all these things into account. We have some clients that actually send home monitors, full-size keyboards and mouse, printers, scanners, all kinds of things, so that the person is 100% functional in a work from home or in a mobile situation after this crisis is over. Some operational considerations. I would suggest that you establish some standard work from home, that's work from home hours, so that everybody kind of knows when people are working. It's tempting to, maybe work at different hours. If you have some sort of policies around that, you want to make sure you get those established with your staff up front. You may want to establish some set pre-planned times for company-wide or departmental calls, just so that everybody knows. For example, IT Radix, we every morning at 8:30, all the technical team and the service coordination team know, and we do this even when it's not a situation like this, that at 8:30 we all get together on a phone call. Obviously, during this time, we're just continuing that, and we're adding more as needed, so that we can get the entire organization together. The other thing I would suggest you consider doing is creating a distribution list that can also send, in addition to just emails, but also text to emails to the cell phones, so that if people are disconnected, they're still able to get messages through. What we find in terms of the operational considerations is one of the huge things is communications. It's just huge. When you're working remotely, it's going to require that you're paying extra attention to responsiveness. You can use things like Teams or other instant messaging platforms to really help ensure that you're able to be responsive. Video is huge. If you can do some video with your team, that is great, because now you can see that they're engaged and paying attention. If you're hearing typing in the background, you're not 100% sure they're paying attention to you. The other thing I would say is make sure that you're over communicating. Document more. There are solutions out there that we can offer that do like virtual whiteboards. Make sure that you have some sort of accountability or accountability buddy. I would also encourage you to have a list of what the useful URLs are I mean, obviously this is a little bit of an emergency, but you should really have that all the time, so that if a person, needs to get your line of business app or the VPN or the email or whatever the solution is that they're trying to get to, that they know exactly what to do and have this nice list of URLs of where they need to go. If you're using something like Teams, I would suggest you have everybody log in through instant messaging. Have folks update their status in there, whether they're away from their desk, include if they've stepped away and how long they expect to be gone. You could consider having folks updating their calendars so that if their availability. And then last but not least, if you're using virtual meetings, just make sure that you advise folks to do things like muting the microphone so it eliminates the background noise. And when you're in a meeting, make sure that you identify who you are when you're speaking. You'd be surprised that when people are remote, some voices now start to blur together and you're not 100% sure who you're speaking to. All right. Next is in terms of leveraging this tech to make sure that you're, keeping everybody healthy and productive. There's a really nice article that I saw, I believe it was on Martha Stewart, encouraging people to clean their technology, their cell phones, their keyboards, and so forth. We don't discourage that. What I would say is just be careful. You don't want to get them too wet. You don't, too much of a good thing is not a great idea in the case of electronics. So, watered down isopropyl alcohol, using, to clean it and disinfect. You want to make sure you're doing that. You want to make sure that your workspace is comfortable, that you have, good audio, that your chair, a lot of the things that we have in the office to help increase our focus at home, it becomes more of a challenge. There are a lot of time tracking applications out there if you're looking to have folks kind of keep track of what they're doing. Because this is not just a few days, we're expecting it to be, several weeks. I would encourage you to take the time to set up the ergonomics of your desk space. The other thing we find some folks are complaining about is that they're actually sitting more than they might used to, where they would get up and walk and go talk to a colleague. In this case, you're not going to be able to get up and go walk, so I encourage you to get up and walk around. Make sure you're drinking plenty of water. I think this, obviously is a really challenging time for us. You want to make sure that we're being supportive as much as we can. And at the same time, let's keep that security in mind. Again, I didn't go too much into technical detail here today because, again, most of our clients, a different scenario for each client. If you have specific questions, we are here for you. Just to fill you in on what IT Radix is doing, we will be moving towards a fully working from home model. All of my folks are set up to have full phone and computer access from home. We actually prepare for this for snow days, so this is just like an extended snow day for us. But we are here. You can reach us in the usual ways. The phone is 973-298-6908. Service is the best. That's monitored all day long. Service@itradix.com, or you can certainly go on our webpage and submit a ticket there. All right, any questions? All right, thank you so much. I hope this was helpful, and I hope you all stay safe and are able to successfully work from home. Again, IT Radix is happy to help. Take care.